Imagine you are standing alone in a dark alley. The air is cold and damp. Every sound seems amplified. The crunch of gravel under your shoes, the distant bark of a dog, the rustle of leaves in the wind. Shadows stretch and twist, turning familiar shapes into menacing forms. You sense movement just beyond your vision, and a pit of fear grows in your stomach. Then you realize, too late, that the people you trusted are no longer your friends. They're watching you. They've already made a decision. And no matter how loud you scream, no one is coming. This isn't a nightmare. This really happened. She was 15 years old. She trusted them. And her final words were a cry for her mother and for Jesus. What happened in this quiet California town is one of the most disturbing crimes ever committed by teenagers, and decades later, the killers are walking free. Arroyo Grande, California, in 1995, was a town that seemed ordinary. Streetlights glowed softly on quiet streets. Parents waved to neighbours across white picket fences. Children played in the fading sunlight. It was a place where danger felt distant until it wasn't. Elyse Pahler was a high school student, a daughter, a friend. She had golden hair that caught the sun in the hallways, a laugh that could make the heaviest heart lighter, and eyes that reflected curiosity and warmth. She had a home, a family who loved her deeply, and a life that seemed ordinary. But in the summer of 1995, her path crossed with 3 boys she thought she knew. They weren't strangers. They were classmates. These were boys Elyse had seen in the same halls, shared the same social spaces with, and likely never imagined could harm her. They laughed, talked, and blended into the background of teenage life. To the outside world, they looked ordinary. But behind that appearance, something darker was growing. On July 22nd, Elyse received an invitation. Nothing unusual. Just an afternoon hanging out, smoking marijuana with friends. A normal teenage decision. Or so she thought. The sun had barely begun its descent, casting long shadows over the lawns and streets. Elyse walked toward the meeting place, her backpack light, her mind wandering between thoughts of schoolwork and weekend plans. She did not know that her ordinary day was about to become her last. What she didn't know was that the boys had already chosen her. The field she would soon enter was surrounded by twisted trees. Mist curled around the trunks, wrapping the branches like ghostly fingers. The wind whispered, carrying sounds that didn't belong. The boys had decided this was where the ritual would happen, where control would be theirs, where darkness would claim innocence. As Elyse stepped into the clearing, she realized too late that something was wrong. The familiar faces of her classmates no longer carried friendliness. They were masks hiding intent she could not yet comprehend. Her heart pounded. Her stomach churned. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but her legs felt heavy, rooted to the ground as if the earth itself held her back. The boys believed they were carrying out a satanic ritual, a sacrifice. And then she heard a twig snap behind her. She turned and froze. She fought. She pleaded. Her voice cracked and broke against the night. She called for her mother. She called for Jesus. Each cry echoed through the misty field, swallowed by the darkness, unanswered. The moon peeked through clouds, casting pale, uneven light on the grass. The sound of wind through the trees was accompanied by the faint, sinister whisper of footsteps. The shadows of the boys loomed larger than life. Elyse tried to run, stumbled on the roots that jutted from the ground, and fell. She felt the cold bite of dirt on her skin, the sharp sting of panic in every nerve. She was left there, alone, bleeding, while her killers walked away. Their footsteps disappeared into the distance. Silence returned, broken only by the ragged sound of her breathing. She pressed her hands to her chest, feeling the thrum of terror and life slipping together in an impossible rhythm. She thought of home, of her family, of a life that had not yet begun. And then, slowly, darkness began to close around her. Days passed. Weeks passed. The town whispered her name, but the truth was hidden. Flyers flapped in the wind outside homes, and candles flickered in windows, yet there was no sign of Elyse. Her family waited, hoped, prayed. Every unanswered knock, every empty doorway deepened the ache of loss. But the truth was hidden for 8 long months, 8 months in which her family lived in uncertainty, 8 months in which the boys carried their secret like a shadow across their lives, knowing the weight of what they had done. Eventually, one of them could no longer bear it. Royce Casey confessed to a pastor. His voice trembled with guilt, his words breaking against the walls of the church. He hoped the confession would ease the burden, though he knew there was no undoing what had been done. That confession led authorities to the remains of Elyse Pahler. The discovery confirmed every fear. Her life had been stolen in a remote field, far from safety or salvation. The community recoiled, grief and horror mingling in the air like a heavy fog. What had once been hope was replaced with sorrow, and what had been waiting was replaced with the undeniable truth. The nightmare was finally exposed. In court, the details shocked the nation. 3 teenagers, barely out of childhood themselves, were guilty of first-degree murder. Their actions were calculated, cruel, and unimaginable. 2 were sentenced to 25 years to life. 1 received 26 years to life. Prison walls could not bring back the warmth of a smile, the sound of laughter, or the dreams that were ripped away. Justice, in its legal form, had been served, but the loss remained immeasurable. Years passed. Headlines faded, but the memory of Elyse Pahler never dimmed. Her name lingered in classrooms, at family gatherings, in quiet conversations. It haunted the town like a shadow that refused to leave. But decades later, the pain was renewed. 2 of Elyse's killers were released from prison. Free. The news sent shockwaves through the community, reopening wounds that had never healed. How do we measure justice when the innocent cannot return? How do we reconcile the release of those who committed unspeakable acts? And what does it mean to live in a world where the perpetrators can walk free? Elyse Pahler was 15 years old. She never got to graduate, never got to dream, never got to live. Her laughter, her hopes, her future, all stolen in that field on a summer day that began like any other. And while time moves on, some stories never truly end. Remember her name.